what I've read recently that community is a big thing now, right? So I'm noticing here, and what I've read so far is that people are moving away from the digital kind of space. When I say digital, meaning like the digitalization of everything, right? We're so attached to our phones, attached to the computer, like social media and all that. And they're looking for community and belonging, right? They're looking for people who are like kind of that where they can relate to. They're meeting people where they what they're looking for in terms of their hobbies. People who are doing different joining different kind of spaces and like clubs and things like that. I'm curious to know at a high level, and I'll go more into detail about this. What are your thoughts? Because that I'm not gonna say it's a startling kind of statistic that I heard, but it's different, right? Because like since COVID, everything was remote, everything is like virtual, and I'm hearing that people are putting the phones down. People are putting their digital footprint, like they're not, the digital footprint is not as expanded as it used to be. And they're like, okay, I want to meet people and I want to build a community around it. What are your thoughts on that at a high level?
Now, at a high level, I think community, we're social creatures. That's always going to be my opinion, right? No matter how
Yeah.
introverted or extroverted you are, you're always
Yeah.
going to need some level of exposure to anything that's beyond you, right? To interact with the world, interact in the environment, and interact with people or animals or whatever, floats your boat. So that sort of leads to a sense of community or connecting with people in your community or with your hobbies or whatever. So yeah, I think community is necessary. I definitely think that just like stocks, everything has a trend, right? Like it's ups and downs, right? Where maybe we were very digital, right? We were very digital on COVID during the pandemic. We're forced to
Yeah.
remain isolated, right? Away from people and not be contagious, be sort of embrace the digital environment because that was our only outlet out other than staying in a room secluded and I don't know, maybe reading a book all day long. But even that might get tiring at some point. So yeah, people needed to embrace it. Maybe they embraced it too much. And now we're seeing the trend of like, you know what? I've done enough liking on Instagram or TikTok or whatever and hitting that heart button. I
So
see people being out there doing stuff, right? They're going out there doing stuff. And here I am sitting and bored out of my mind or not partaking in all these fun activities people are partaking in.
yeah.
And I want to
Yeah.
go and do something, right? But now, this is me just playing it out in my head because I went through similar situations in the past where it's like, all right, what do I do or how do I connect, right? Because it gets very boring when you're just doing it by yourself all the time. Like if you're just bowling by yourself, it's like, okay, great, right? But it would be nice if I had someone else to compete with or just to talk about it, like, oh yeah, you scored, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. So I think community is necessary. I think there is a sort of an incline or inclination of wanting to do that from a lot of people. And now they're trying to figure out how to go about it
The
doing
best way
that.
to go about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it's like, I mean, sidetracking for a second, but it's somewhat related. Do you think the concept of return to office, right? Like do you think the ideology and the concept behind community and like team building and being, there's also a notion of like you're more creative when you're in person, and you're building better solutions and all that when you're in person. Do you think that the reason behind the RTO, the return to office kind of concept, is because of that? And then as you're meeting people at work, you're engaging with them, you become friends with them, you essentially build a work community within that space? Or do you think like, no, that's just like a gimmick and all that, for people to return to office? I know it's completely different, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's in line that we cannot live digitally on the digital world all the time. And we cannot just, be living in the social world all the time because that
Yeah.
also requires, a lot of like hearing other people's feedback, opinions, right? And so on, and it just might be too much, right? Or you're like, you know what, I do need some me time because I've been out and about too much. So we always need, I think, a hybrid approach in life, right? Whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in life, where it's like, all right, yes, we need exposure to people, exposure to our colleagues, and collaborate and build some sort of friendship that we may not be able to do digitally because when you're on a work call, right, you just might jump into, all right, what are we trying to achieve for this meeting? The achievement in the meeting might be, I need to get, XYZ done. How are we getting it done? When is it going to get done? Cool. We'll meet up again to see if it got done. All right. So it might be very to the point because everyone has a ton of meetings that are in their schedule and they're just trying to solution rather than trying to collaborate with each other. Collaborate in the sense of
Yeah.
like getting to know you or social. I shouldn't say collaborate, just socialize, right? So there
Socializing and
isn't that
essentially,
room for socialization.
yeah, and essentially building a community, right? So Americans are increasingly seeking real world friendships, kind of alluding to what you just said, and communities after years of digital isolation, right? Obviously, what you just kind of talked about pre or post COVID. What I'm seeing here is like a few things. So when we're thinking about community and when we're thinking about belonging, when we're thinking about like creating different spaces and network and meet people and things like that, I'm seeing that I've read and I'm also seeing personally that people are finding creative ways to build that community, right? So like things like movie clubs, right? Book clubs and things like run clubs, for example. And I definitely want to touch on each one of them. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like at a high level, what do you think of that? Really? Do you think of like people are finding creative ways to meet new people, to network, to socialize, right? To find essentially kind of do a whole new concept and thought process of dating, which is the whole concept of the run club, which I'll explain. But curious to hear what are your thoughts about that, right? Because people are really truly trying to find that community and they're being clearly very creative about it.
Yeah, like I guess I'll use my own personal sort of adventure into this realm of making new friends or meeting new people and just building a community and doing things that I would enjoy. So I noticed in Facebook, right, there's a group criteria you can like go
Uh-huh.
into and research and figure out what kind of groups exist. Um, and they're very basically community groups, right? So you can find the examples that you provided, like arts club and other things that you'll see, or even like hiking clubs. So there are all these sort of groups that you can, some of them are private, some of them are public. They could go in
Yeah.
and join, and then you can see like a very active community saying, all right, we're going to go and hike in 2 weeks. These are the 3 spots that we're thinking of going to. Let's all vote on one of them and make it happen. And you end up going, you don't know anyone, but they're all thankfully very friendly. Everyone introduces themselves, you introduce yourself, and then you go on a journey with initially a bunch of strangers, and you end up talking about random topics. It could be about your job, it could be about your personal life, it could just be about like how you hike to many places and your adventure and in doing so, and some of your craziest hikes. You end up bonding basically, and all it took was clicking a group, having the courage to just go like, I'm gonna show up, and then hopefully building long-term bonds with those people. And it could just be that's the activity you two enjoy and you go and do, all right, with that group. Similarly, there's another app that I recall using was called Meetup. And it's focused on meeting up, meeting people, and doing things that you might enjoy doing. There are things like kayaking, or things like sketching in the garden, or like drawing in the garden, or a lot of everything you can think of, from like people that are into clubbing or movies or whatever it might be. So you could find a
Yeah.
group that might be interested into the hobbies that you're interested in and build a community from there. But yeah, was my exposure to finding cool things and sort of making new friends from that.
Yeah, speaking of like, well, before I get there, I had another thought. Curious to hear what you think about this as well. So this is good for extroverted, right? Like people who are like, outgoing or want to meet new people and engage with others, right? Like meet strangers and that blossoms into something great. But I wonder on the flip side, how difficult would it be for introverts, right? Or would it be and would it not be difficult? You may not be able to answer this, but just curious to hear your thoughts on that. Like, for introverts, may not be as easy as clicking a button and then just going to place and meeting someone random. How do you think they feel, or like, what do you think they might be
So
able to
there are
do, right?
groups I would say cater to those individuals as well, where they need low touch points with like the external communities, right?
Okay,
But they
I
need to
see.
build
Yeah,
something in order to have a conversation with someone. So instead of just focusing on chat forums and digital ways of remaining an introvert, if they want to sort of say, you know what, I would like to have a friend to talk to,
yeah,
then they would
yeah,
go to like things like the anime club, right? If that's one of their interests, right? If they are readers, they could go to a book club. And all it
yeah,
would take from joining those groups might be a virtual session, right? If they want to keep things virtual, but also maybe not meet as frequently, but meet up one time, talk to those individuals, right? find out that they really have a lot of strong interest and commonality in, let's say, anime. And then they exchange each other's numbers or their digital contacts. And then they go home and they maintain, like, they'll literally have a conversation with this person, maybe on the daily or on whatever, digitally, which allows them to remain introverted, right? But know that they are talking to a person that they met in real life versus someone that they, it's only digital and never met. So I think that's how they probably go about balancing out their introvertedness. And that could be the same. It's not, they could have, if they don't want regular conversation, that's fine. Maybe they could just set up like every month, we're going to, like a Reader's Digest. We'll talk
Yeah.
about everything we read, anime, or everything we watched, and we'll have a couple hour session of discussion at the end of the month, and we're good. We'll meet up again the next month, and that might be their agreement. So I feel like there are groups to entertain whatever type of personality or lifestyle you want to.
Yeah. No, speaking of that, I'm glad you brought that up. You answered that. So here's one thing interesting and intriguing, I would say. Speaking of community and like people are finding creative ways on how to connect and collaborate and, like meet new people and socialize. So what I've seen is some of the sources I've said and what I've seen also is people are moving away or drifting away slowly from dating apps and they're doing things like what we spoke about was like the different kinds of clubs, right? So like running club, for example, where like they're finding a hobby, kind of what you just alluded to about the anime thing. But they're finding a hobby and they're like, okay, like I want to find like-minded individuals and I want to go join them and I want to do these things. And so what they're seeing is that, especially like in the dating world, they're finding like things like where it involves physical activity, focuses on like for your physical health, like a run club. They'll go meet people and like, they find things a lot more in common because they're doing something that they both enjoy. They're doing something that they consider as a hobby, right? They're doing something that they consider as a lifestyle. And so like I think it automatically helps them connect more. And so they're like, hey, I'm gonna shy away from this digital space of doing dating apps and then move into and focus more into the socializing through things like Run Club. Curious to hear like if you've had any experiences, obviously not the dating side, but like in terms of like any clubs and things like that, right? How are you socializing in your own personal experience? And I got some ways that I'm kind of doing it too.
So I guess I'll give twofold answers in this, right? Because there's the run club idea, right? So I could see how that would be a trending way of meeting people because the app sort of, and it depends, right? Depends on the individual. Although I hear a
Yeah,
lot
of
of
course.
both sides of the picture saying that it's very hard to find someone, right? Anyone goes on an app, right?
Yeah.
They're going to see pictures of that individual. That's the first thing that they see. Big pictures of that individual and whatever they want to give. And it's probably some of the most beautified pictures you can find of that individual, the best looking picture. So you're supposed to present your best self. So, right. So I could see how that alludes
Right.
to maybe certain groups. And I don't think every group falls into this run club notion, right?
Yeah.
The
Yep.
fitness group, the ones that want to look, physically fit, a type of way, model status, whatever you want to call them, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be into maintaining a fit body, right? A fit health, a healthy lifestyle. And if that's your target and that's the type of individuals you're trying to pursue, a run club would be a really good, and that doesn't mean that there's only one type of body type that are running. There are many types. There could be, just a walk 5K kind of type as well, right? So these are, so I might not just call it run club, I might call it walk club, depending on what your interests
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I could see it because it's a fitness. There's that agreement, like we want to be fit, we want to be healthy, we want to live, we want to look good, we want to live a long life, whatever it might be. And you're going to find a lot of people, and that's a big part of life, I want to say, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're working all day and you're coming out back from work and you're going to spend an hour or whatever in the gym, right? And then you have an hour to eat and then over an hour back to go to sleep and get whatever else done, that takes up 1/3 of your evening, 1/4 of
Yeah.
your evening,
It's true.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
So imagine spending 1/4 of an evening or a weekend or whatever running with individuals and having that in common already. So I think that's my response to why that might be a good place to find someone who shares that lifestyle with you. The point about dating, right? So I remember as a Muslim, one of the things that I tried to do was go to a lot of And this was, I guess, it comes down to you. For me, as religion was a very important thing, right? And I was trying to grow my religious knowledge. I wanted to find like-minded people because that was my way of life and how I wanted to live the rest of my life. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna attend a bunch of convention center stuff, a lot of like lectures and like NYU and New York City's Islamic centers. I've also attended just random masjid get-togethers, right? Whether it was like a halakha session, which is just like a gathering of people talking about, religious events and sharing how that connects to the current way of life and how it could improve life and how we need to, I guess, stay away from some things to better our sort of health and mindset. So yeah, I found like-minded friends there. I met some of my closest friends from those gatherings. Unfortunately, I didn't find a spouse from that perspective, but it was an opportunity to talk to people and meet the other genders and share your thoughts and see where things go.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, like, and I'm reading here, and I definitely want to read this to you, kind of piggybacking off what you just said. So I see here it says Americans, like there's a quote here. Americans are increasingly turning to run clubs and fitness communities and hobby groups and outdoor activities to replace social media fatigue and isolation as well. So in addition to the networking and meeting new people, people are also doing those things and joining these groups and all the activities because of the social media fatigue, right? Like post COVID, they've
Mm,
like kind of they're tired and they really want to meet people. In doing that, they're finding the next business partner. They're finding their new companion, new significant other. They're finding a new friend that they feel like they had a lot of common things, a lot of things in common. And so I think it's just overall the concept of it is cool. I mean, I see that now you have to be more creative, right? In terms of if you're, especially for someone who's in the dating world and like kind of looking, but also if you're, someone who wants to meet new people and network, and if you have a business idea, you never know where your next funding might come from, where your next business partner might come from, right? Like, and that you go into like, like I think you mentioned that you go to a sports thing, right? And like, I'm sure you didn't know everyone there, and I'm sure you're a little bit more closer than you were before, right? Going to these things. So I think it's just a good idea. You never know as you're communicating and you're casually having conversations. You never know where the next big idea, next big solution, the next companion, the next friend, that you can potentially go on a trip with. Like you never know where you're going to meet them, right? And so my point is, I think that's a great thing. I do
yeah.
want to quickly also touch on this here. Hold
Just to
on.
interject, I know you know that I do a sports thing, but just for our audience, I am part of
Yes,
like
please do.
a Muslim football league that I joined, and I met a bunch of, good friends that we just enjoy playing football with, right? And that's all there is to that, that friendship, right? We just go and enjoy an activity. We meet up weekly and we're competitive, right? We talk about wins and losses and how to get better at it, what we did that worked, what we did that didn't work. And yeah, so that's all there is to
Can we
that,
can we
activity.
ca- can we break that down for a second? For those who are like, I guess like, they'll watch this episode, right? They're like, oh, this is a good idea. I never thought about this. How did you, can you walk, like, and maybe it was just like very simple for you. How did you kind of, like, where did you find the group? Like, were you invited? And, what made you like want to do something like that? Were you just like, hey, I just need another hobby, or I need to like get out more? What was the thought process behind it? And how did this all come about for you? Because then I see you included one of our other friends as well, right? I don't know if you included him or he included
Yeah,
himself and
yeah,
you
I
just kind of
included
figured it
him.
out. But so
So
that's what I
it
mean.
comes
Like,
by
yeah.
shared interest, right? So sometimes you're friends with a bunch of people who may not know everything about you. So you suddenly talk about, well, I enjoy playing sports, right? And then they're like, oh, I didn't know you enjoyed playing sports, right? And then they talk about, oh, I'm part of the league, right? I'm actively in it, and if you're interested, I'll keep you in mind. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely interested. I need to get more fit, more healthy, right? So keep me posted. And it was a conversation that took like maybe it was done a year ago, and then suddenly an opportunity arose. That friend kept me in mind and said, hey, remember you said you wanted to play? Well, we have a spot open. If you're done, let me know. And I was like, yeah, I'll be down. Right. And that's all it took. Right. A short conversation about learning more about your friend by asking, questions. right? And then they tell you they keep you in mind often, right? And then once I joined and I enjoy it, I knew one of my other friends who, was very actively, who liked sports as well. Cause and why? Because sometimes it's something that you do casually where you just send a random invitation like, hey, I want to go play basketball. Do you want to go play? And they say yes. That sort of tells you, and then you ask five of your friends, and that one friend is the only one that says he's interested in playing, shows that he
Yeah.
has an interest in one thing that you have in common with that person. But the other four friends that don't come tells you that maybe that's not something that they're too interested in, right? And that repeat behavior, repeat action, sort of for me as a data point guy is like, oh, okay, this guy is, he likes playing sports. He's competitive. He's kind of like me. So let me invite
Yeah.
him. And lo and behold, I invited him. He's like, yeah, I'll be down. I'm very interested. And he'll ask you, right? Like, oh yeah, when are we going to do this? So when you see that enthusiasm combining with your sort of intuition that this person would be interested, meshes, it's like, okay. And we invited him, he joined along, and what started with one friend doing his own thing ended up being two friends and three friends, and then the virus spreads. And then you have a good kind of virus spreading, the community virus spreading, and not the pandemic kind.
So do you feel like I assume you met more people, right? Because you have teammates. Do you feel like for you, it makes obviously initially made sense because this is a hobby. You were interested in it, but like in terms of the socialization part, do you feel like you're communicating with people more now? And I assume you are because you're in a team, but like, do you see yourself being friends with some people on the team? Do you see yourself having more different kind of conversations with other people on the team? Or is it just like, no, hey, I just go do my thing and then I don't speak to nobody and come back? Which I doubt that's the case, but just want to hear from you.
So my conversations are mainly about like the sports and how we're gonna win and what we did right and wrong. And but then there is just rapport, right? We ask about, yo, how was your weekend? How are things going? Where are you?
Hmm.
So there is those little small talks that might happen right before the game, right, or right after
Yeah.
the game that lets you, learn a little bit about that individual and them about you as well. But this is where you are in your life and what you're trying to pursue, right? Um, Alhamdulillah, thankfully, I'm very blessed to have a lot of friends. So me trying to connect more, right, and not be able to sort of share enough time with a new friend does limit like how much, let's say, I do interact with individuals just because even if I like that, and this is what I've noticed in the past, right? I made some friends, I really
Hmm.
connected with that individual, and I wanted to really badly like prolong that. I mean, meet up, talk to them, etc. But then I was already so committed to my family life and my existing group of friends that I didn't really have time to like reach out to that person and build a new friendship and bond. So it really depends where you are in life and what you're trying to pursue. If you're trying to expand your network of friends, right? If you're already comfortable with where you are, or if you're, and sometimes, as you said, you might have too much exposure to people and you just need some me time, right? So at this stage, I'm glad if it goes somewhere, right? But if they're the ones that are like sort of initiating and trying to build a longer or a closer friendship, I think I will definitely go for it because I'm always thinking the more the merrier. But am I gonna go and do it as much? Just to be honest, like no, because I feel like I won't give as much as I should, as much time as I should. But I'm always a time person. Long story short, I'll find the time, right? But I might be a little bit more lazier towards it. I guess. What
So I
about
would
you? Where are you in your like a stage in life and how much you want to sort of expand it or get to know people and how good do you think you would feel being able to maintain it and build a stronger bond.
Yeah, as you know, I mean, we've been friends for a long time. As you know, like I was a social butterfly, right? Like I've met so many people, know so many people, and engaged with a lot of them. Had multiple friends. For me, it was about dialing it back in, right? Having a good group of friends, a circle of friends that you can build a community with, build a trust with, build a bond with, that eventually grow into you becoming a family with them, right? That's the way I treat my friends. And so for me, it's important to do that. But I still network here
Like
and
Fast
there.
and the Furious, my friends are my family.
Yeah, right? Like exactly what Vin Diesel says. I don't got friends, I have family. So yeah, so that's my point. Well, I mean, I forgot who the director of Fast and Furious is. If you want to an actor, qualified one, you can also call me. Uh, must plug. But what I was saying was, yeah, no, I mean, like, for me, it's I like that you're doing that. For me, it's like, like I'm into this whole new hobby thing, right, with the trading card games. I think I see myself kind of meeting new people, talking to people about these things, obviously inclusive of my friends, but also outside of them. Want to learn as much as I can. The reason why, because my kids are more involved in it. I think I see the way you are with football and things like that, finding that hobby. I think I'm going down that direction too, in a slower, gradual pace, but going down that direction. In terms of like networking and things like that, that's something that I always constantly do and I've done. And I think for me, it's more important. I'm at a space in my life where, like, how do I help people, right? Like, I want to be able to help people as much as I can. I care about people, as you know, and like, I want to, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And so, as Drake says, and I want to I want to be able to make people laugh and enjoy the memories and the moments. I don't think small things should ever let anything or anyone get in the way. And I live my life that way, right? That's why I'm always like joking around all the time, because life already is too serious. So for me, I try to find and meet people who have commonalities like I do, and like embrace the same kind of thought and mindset and perspective. Because I think that helps you in such a long way, right? Like, and I want to kind of transition that into something, because it kind of relates to my next point that I was going to ask you about, which is like, I'm hearing that, the whole concept of anti-hustle culture, right? Like in the past, it was like hustle, 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 money, money, money. During COVID, I heard like people were doing two, three jobs, right? It was all about hustling. Now I'm hearing the reverse, right? It's like people do want to live a simpler life. People want to have their business or their 9 to 5, and then they want to go like and go to these run clubs and go to these sports clubs and these book reading clubs. Some people have cooking clubs and stuff like that. Like, they want to live a more simplistic and simpler life. And then you said something about a quote earlier, which I forgot what it was, but hopefully you can say it again later on. Curious to hear your thoughts about that, right? Like, because before you tell me your thoughts, I'm going to read you this. So, again, an article that I found and read. It says that more Americans are embracing slow living, so not the fast-paced life anymore. Analog hobbies like cooking, gardening, reading, and reducing screen time. And what that does is it alleviates, not eliminates, but alleviates burnout, nostalgia, like overstimulation, right? I went to the car show with you a couple of weeks ago. I was like definitely overstimulated, and emotional exhaustion as well, right? Because you get exhausted of like constantly hustling, hustling, hustling. So like I want to hear your thoughts overall, just the concept of the anti-hustle culture, but also what are some of the things that you're doing or have heard other people do?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I think about stuff like this, I recall like reading these articles where a lot of these tech CEOs or, people that are living a very potentially, I guess, stressful life, right? Require going on trips where they like don't even take their phones and
Yeah,
not do anything digital, right? I forget what the term like there was a term that they coined for those sort of gather spiritual or whatever on digitizing or whatever gatherings. It seemed like it was a hot topic for some time. And what they would do is literally they'd go on whatever trips, they'll do some yoga stuff, they'll sort of just, de-digitize or whatever you want to call it, and focus on nature, right? Go on walks, go on hikes, go do yoga stuff, go on long baths, right? And just talk about, and some of them didn't even go with people. Sometimes they just wanted themselves, right? It depends on what floats your boat, but the whole point of it was to say there was too much stimulations, right? And there
yeah,
was just too much, when you look at your phone, it tells you your weekly progress report that you've killed 8 hours a day on your phone. You're just like, wow, all right. And
yeah.
it's like, what am I
I saw
doing with
mine
my
this
life?
morning.
Or all right. And it's sort of like that, I if I just took that effort, time, and did something else that was more productive or more just like, gave my brain some rest so that I'm not stressed out as much, that would help, right? So I think that's what's happening with that statement of like people just doing things that takes them away from being digital, gives them some me time, right? And just thoughts in your head. There's so much research that's in this topic that shows that this overstimulation is causing a lot of ADD, right? Attention deficit disorder on young kids, right? And we're talking about young kids, but who's talking about the adults? I'm sure the adults are we're not immune to those issues that kids are going to be facing. So
Yeah,
some people, they're just looking at the TV screen, and then they still need to socialize on their phone, but then they're still having a conversation with the person next to them. We're like, which one are you doing? Right. So all of this sort of, and then you're not doing, there's research that proves that you're not doing any of them properly. You're just giving partial treatment to each of them. So you're not having a very genuine or, authentic or even like a conversation you're going to remember properly because you're doing three
Yeah.
things at once. So the best way to do it is actually tackle each one to like a potential step. It doesn't mean you have to finish it all, but maybe to a particular step where it's like, you know what, I did justice to this part, right? Whether I'm having a one-on-one convo, all right, I ended the convo at a key topic that we'd be cool with. Now I'm looking at my phone to address something. So sort of taking those steps is very important. And I feel like that's what people are trying to do. Like, all right, let me just focus on things, avoid these ADD type issues that people are having, right?
Yeah.
And there are stuff that, it affects our thought processes, right? Our focus and our happiness and appreciation, right? I think we end up enjoying, and again, this is based on research. Based on research, like we end up enjoying stuff that we can recall doing because we weren't like all over the place. But yeah, like what about your thoughts like on maybe impact on you or people you've observed, right? And how they are taking this sort of slow living,
Mhm.
and embracing
Yeah.
it.
I mean, like I can speak for myself, right? Like I used in the past to be like the hustle, hustle, hustle mentality. Working three, four, five different jobs sometimes, and like doing three, four different side hustles. And as I get older, I'll be pushing 40 this year. As I get older, I want that casual, slow living, and part of the reason why I even moved out of the Bronx, right? Like in New York City is a hustle and bustle culture, right? Was also to have that slow paced life. I wanted, yeah, you live a suburban life now, but it's also not just not because I can say those things. It's more importantly for me, it's like I want that slow paced living. I want to be able to enjoy the fresh air and not think about well, like what's the next best thing and things like that. Simultaneously, for me, I've always, when you come from New York City, it's always about like you're always on the go, 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 focus on making money, focus on doing like the next big thing. So for me, it's important to sometimes dial down, dial back. I go on vacations with family, friends, and things like that.
Mhm.
I promote the slower living. I tell people like move to the suburbs. It's a whole different lifestyle. I enjoy living in the suburbs, right? Like I used to wake up to gunshots and sirens and the typical New York City life. I don't think I need to explain that for people who live in New York City.
Hey, that's not typical. We're pretty safe city,
I
They
mean,
can
I
cap,
mean,
yeah,
well, now, yeah, sorry, Miriam Mamdani. I apologize if you ever watch this. Yes, it's much better. It's gotten much safer and stuff like that. But I mean, it happens everywhere, right? And like just craziness, even here
yeah.
in the suburbs. My point is that like, it's not noise, right? Like I don't wake up to noise where I used to wake up to a lot of noise. Very quiet living, very different lifestyle than what I've been
Can
living.
I interject? I have a comment on this crime thing, if you
Okay,
don't mind. So there's this app called Citizens app that
Mm,
we have access to,
ever, yeah,
and so crime has always happened, right? The
everywhere, yeah,
difference
everywhere.
is the difference is how much did you know about it, right?
True.
How much of that information is getting to you, right?
Yep.
Because the whole out of sight, out of mind really plays a big role into our perception of the world and what are going, what are going around, what is going around our community, our block, our state, our country, whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
that whole overstimulation conversation that we're having here is like I literally came across people, friends, families, etc., who had to uninstall their Citizens app because they would get theft happening, robbery happening, somebody got assaulted, ambulances
Mhm.
nearby on their zip code. Like would they enter in the zip code like every few hours? So each day they were getting 5+ notifications, right? If you did turn on your notification to learn about all the not so good stuff happening, right? And some people don't do well with that information and they get depressed.
Yep.
I'm not living in a very safe community. I need to get out of here. Other people had to uninstall it. Some people turned off the notification. Other
True.
people like me, I'm like, no, I'm going to keep it on. I'll turn off the notification. But if I'm going out and about, maybe occasionally I'll check what's going on, right? Just to
Yeah.
get a sense of where am I living? Maybe
To keep you
sometimes you could
informed.
live in a very, yeah, exactly. Maybe you could be living in an illusion where you think everything is safe, but it's truly not. You've just been lucky enough not to be exposed to it. So yeah, I feel just going back into this that crime happens or all of this stuff happens. It just depends on how
Yeah.
much you want to focus on it or not.
Yeah. That's a good conversation. for a future episode, we definitely need to expand on that. I want to hear, so any
But yeah, you
advice,
went to saying
thoughts,
that you wanted to live in, you moved, right, in order to reduce that stimulation, right?
reduce
And
assimilation,
enjoy
right?
slow
So
living.
not right, not
Yeah.
exactly. That's the whole, that was the concept behind what I was trying to say. Not, it wasn't just about crime. I'm born and bred in New York City. That's home. But yeah, it's to
But you
reduce
still come
overstimulation,
to
things like that.
Bronx and
All the
Queens
time. That's
because
home. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you still need that
That's my
exposure
place.
to, yeah, you
Yeah,
still
I
need
don't
that
feel
exposure, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And what I used to say before, and I say it all the time: exposure dictates experience, right? I need that. I feed off of that, right? Like I enjoy New York City is always my home. I always come there. I have family there. I have friends there. I'm always gonna be there. I didn't get away because of just that. For me, it was more focused towards a slower living, right? The less fast paced life. I have kids too, so they get to enjoy a little bit. They get to see a different side than how I typically grew up. Not that the way I grew up was bad. It was just more very different now. But that was what I was trying to
And that's what we need,
articulate.
right? We need a balance, right? I guess that's what I
Yeah,
wanted to emphasize here is that slower living does not mean you're completely isolating and giving
out of
yourself up
yeah,
from
yep,
anything,
yep,
right? It just
yeah, yeah.
means you're reprioritizing where you want to be. And maybe when you're when you're younger, right, you do want to go on the hustle bustle,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
But
Yeah, yeah,
again, overstimulation of that information where everyone is saying, go hustle, go do this, go, go work crazy. And every generation is getting the same information, right? That's going to impact all of us equally, right? Where it's not just, the people that are older in life that have done through it and gone through it and now going to a different, phase in life. I think that was probably not just a recent occurring, that was throughout generations, right? As you get older, you wind out. But I think all of the generations getting this information about you must hustle, you must go crazy, you must do this, right? They're saying, you know what? No, I don't want to do that when I'm 40 years old or when I'm hitting
yeah.
retirement. I want to start that lifestyle now, right?
No, yep,
Because you could be 25, just graduated or whatever, right? Started your work and like, no, I want to have that balance. I don't want to go crazy on it, right? So I think
yeah.
that's important to say it's affecting all the generations in
Agreed.
current day events.
Yep. Okay. We gave a lot of knowledge. We gave solutions. We talked about a lot of things. What is your one takeaway for the audience, or a quote that you want people to take away with?
Get out there,
I
right?
have mine.
Get out there. Get out there if you're a homebody and you're just bored clicking away, right? And you need some, you're done with digital stimulation and you want to, make new friends, whatever it might be, date, find someone, etc. So get out there, right? But also, don't do it to the point where you're overexhausting yourself and you're just like, I need to like wind down. So balance between the two. Don't I think going extreme on either side is always going to have its sort of downfalls, right? And its
Mhm.
negativity. And at the end of the day, you'll find the right type of person or group of community that you want to sort of prolong that friendship or whatever ship with, right? And find the right medium to enjoy life.
Okay,
What
nice.
about you?
I have mine. So a good friend of mine that know me said this quote, and knowledge doesn't give you courage, experience does. And so everyone can interpret these things in a different way. I'll say it again. Knowledge doesn't give you courage, experience does. So I think what he's trying to say, or my interpretation of it, is kind of similar to what you just said, was if you don't go out and experience things, if you have all this knowledge and information and you don't utilize it, you don't apply it, and you don't go actually experience it, it's never going to go nowhere, right? Like that's where the courage comes from actually doing, versus just hearing about it. So that's a pretty good quote that came from him.
But I think it's a very real statement, right? Experience is what lets you actually like words could or words until you take action, right? So it'll come
Yeah,
down to it.
knowledge doesn't give you courage, experience does. All right. Well, for those that are listening, thank you so much for listening. Appreciate you. Subscribe, like, and all that stuff. And until next time, we'll see you soon.